Hey guys, this is RJ Bob, and once again, welcome to hashtag the Blue Mike English Edition, your independent favorites. And this is an initiative by Big FM and Hungama Artists Allowed. And the artist that we are going to be talking about today is Kapil Seshasayee. Hi, Kapil. Welcome to hashtag the Blue Mike English Edition.
Thank you so much for having me. Lovely to be here.
Right. Okay, before we begin, please just introduce yourself and also the lovely lady who's here with you today.
My name is Kapil Seshasayee. I am a protest musician based in Scotland, but I was born in Tamil Nadu in India. And next to me is my beautiful wife, Diljit Korbatri, who'll be playing flute with me this afternoon.
Okay, welcome. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome. And we're so glad that you're here with Kapil. Maybe you could share some stories about Kapil that he probably would not share about himself. Right. Okay. Okay. Kapil, we're currently playing, the Ballad of Bant Singh on our station right now. And
yes.
yeah. And well, we believe it's a song from your debut album. Yeah. But you've given this, given it a new twist. So can you tell us a bit about the song?
Absolutely. The Ballad of Bant Singh is a celebration of the bravery of a singer from the Punjab, not relatively that far from where your station is, in fact. So Bant Singh is a Punjab protest singer, labourer, activist, and he made history when he defeated some upper caste abusers in court who unfortunately assaulted his own daughter. These abusers unfortunately retaliated in an attack that was barbaric and left him without use of his limbs or his legs. You would assume that being left for dead would mean he wouldn't continue being an activist, but no, he continues traveling around India in a wheelchair, singing songs against the caste system, singing songs for labor rights, and, one of the most inspiring figures I've ever read about. So I thought I'd celebrate him with a piece of music in his honor.
How did you get to where you are? How did you get to becoming this person, this firebrand protest musician that you are?
It was a very organic journey. I didn't always make political music. I grew up with a lot of very middle of the road rock music, interspersed with classical music. My parents would play me growing up, loads of Carnatic music and things like that. But when I was in my 20s, I started encountering, casteism in Scotland, not directly, but I witnessed it happening to other people. And it made me think, oh, wow, I didn't realize that, this kind of bigotry could be imported as far away as where I grew up in Scotland, basically from India. But I went to go see a couple of bands in Scotland who make a lot of political music themselves. And I was really inspired by that. And it made me think, what am I writing songs about? I need to go out there. I need to be writing songs about things that matter. And that organically built up into the first album I ever released, which was A Sacred Boar, my concept album about the Indian caste system, which the Ballad of Bant Singh is originally from. But this is a new version that you're playing on your station, obviously.
All right. So as growing up as a child in Glasgow, who were the musicians that inspired you, the artists?
If you're referring specifically to artists from Glasgow, a singer-songwriter called John Martin had always been a massive influence on me. He's a lot of people know him for his 70s hit, May You Never, which Eric Clapton covered, but he has a whole breadth of music in many different genres like jazz, blues, folk, and even some experimental electronic music. That had a massive influence on me growing up. There's not an awful lot of Scottish influence in the music I make. There's more Indian influence, more American influence. And when it's from the UK, it's usually the scene in London and the south of the UK that I'm kind of pulling that inspiration from. But more recently, I've been listening to more Scottish music from the islands off the coast of Scotland. And there's some rich folk traditions out that way. So yeah, I'm always looking for new things to listen to.
So I guess it's time for us to listen to a song from you. You already have your guitar. And has a flute, right? So what song is it going to be?
Yeah, we've been talking about the Ballad of Bant Singh. We'll play a little stripped down version of that for you today. Do you want to get in tune? Are you all right? Disconnect from all the stars that sort of dim as if to genuflect. An allocation that I hope was a command of cards. An allegation that will render all my limbs tonight. You're sick to a helper.
adore. My only failings in a bit to than anything. Don't call my bluff if you're not anxious. Hiding by it, saying to load it and return, but just in case. Spite that your only motive is to make it wise. Run the risk of new, I should have been more wary of decapitation as a token of my only hope. You're set to a hell path until you go, and that's all. Don't value your worth as if it hurts, shaping your guides to an image to a virtue, fabricating the one that you adore. My only failings in a bit to that anything. Don't call my bluff if you're not anxious. Hiding by it, saying to load it and return, but just in case.
Wow, wow. Right. That was great. All right. So let's talk about your debut album then. You know, you released it in 2018 and it received a very positive response. But personally now, 5 years down the line, how do you look back on it?
It's very different to the music I make now. It's a lot more experimental, a lot more industrial, a lot heavier sounding in places. I think that a lot of Indians struggle to listen to it because it had a very metal-y guitar influence in places, that album. But I don't regret making that music at all. That was what I was listening to. That's the music I was going to make. So it's interesting because I wouldn't make those songwriting choices now. I wouldn't make those sonic choices now. And, you know, my wife appears on a couple of places on that album, but you're not, I think you're in one song that we're going to play for you next, but or next in the set list. But you know, in general, it's a very different beast. Like I used to tour that album, just me and a guitar and maybe a laptop for some drum machines. So to go from that to the full live band setup of my new music is quite a journey. So I'm happy that it exists. The politics of it are exactly how I feel about Cast now. So nothing has changed, but musically it can be more different.
Okay. Being a person of color, I mean, apart from the kind of music that people expect from you, well, there's also this expectation that that you should be representing the people of color. So, do you feel the burden of representation on you? Do you feel it?
I think it used to be quite different because I used to make more punky guitar music that was more indebted to white guitar bands from the 80s and the 70s, and that scene isn't as inclusive of people of color. But organically, and by organically, I started listening to the music my wife grew up with. I started getting more into R&B, more into hip hop, and the music I make now is far more indebted to R&B and hip hop and rap than anything else I've ever made. So it's okay. Organically speaking, people maybe expect like groovier, more R&B sounding music from a person of color, and I've organically shifted to that over time. So it was initially quite the challenge, and it's quite an exclusive scene, like only white artists on every festival bill. But over time, I mean, I'm singing about Indian issues and I'm gravitating towards the music that Indian people tend to listen to. Because for me, it's a bonus if like a white Western audience gravitate towards what I do. But I make music for an Indian audience and I make music with them in mind. So, making music that's POC friendly is perfectly okay with me.
Yeah, of course. So I guess it's time for us to listen to a song. After listening to the very first one, don't think that anyone is anyone would want to wait, longer to hear the next song. So what song is it going to be?
Absolutely. This song is from my album about my debut album, A Sacred Boar. It's the folkiest song on it, and it was the first track of mine that my wife appeared on. So the song is called Exemption Hum, and it's from my album, A Sacred Boar. Okay.
All right. I really love the sound of the flute. It's so peaceful and relaxing. So
Absolutely.
right. Now, Bollywood has been a theme that you've tackled quite a bit. So tell us about your thoughts on the enduring influence of Bollywood on people of South Asian origin everywhere. What are the pros and cons of this influence?
I think like any pop culture platform, any pop culture juggernaut, pick any Hollywood, Bollywood, anything around the world, there's things to love about it, and there's things that we maybe need to like have a discussion about. And for me, Lal is an album of celebration of Bollywood and what makes it great and what makes me proud to be Indian, but it also is a criticism in places of what we maybe need to be having conversations about. And, I talk about things like how hill stations, which are typically venues for incredible Bollywood song and dance numbers going back many decades, they have origins in colonialism. And I love that the Indian film industry has taken this really exclusive colonial settlement like a hill station around India and turned it into something that's very synonymous with Indian culture. The flip side is, there's loads of propaganda that Bollywood is used as a tool for, and, a lot of it very right-wing and a lot of it very questionable in terms of its treatment of minorities, be it disabled people, people who are LGBTQ+, or, even people who don't have caste privilege or class privilege. And for me, it's like, hey, I don't dislike Bollywood at all. I love a Bollywood film as much as the next guy. We watch Bollywood films together. It's more, I think that we need a bit of nuance when it comes to the pop culture we consume, because Bollywood has a massive influence on pop culture, and that's what my new album Lal is about.
Right. We'll talk about that album in a while. But first, tell us about your musical progression between your first album, A Secret Door, and now. Who are the artists and what are the sounds that have captured your imagination between your first album and now, where you are right now?
My first album was really influenced by like a lot of different experimental noisy music from North America. But with my new music, I increasingly fell really hard for like R&B and hip hop, specifically artists like Frank Ocean, Solange, and D'Angelo. Those are the big three artists that I was really pulling from. And me and my wife have very different musical backgrounds. Would you agree? Like we probably have, was it one album that we both like? And that one album that we both like is A Seat at the Table by Solange, her seminal 2016 album. And for me, that album was the beginning of me working on Lal, like getting obsessed with it. How did she get sounds? How did she produce these parts? And most importantly, how did she write these chord progressions and these melodies? And that was the beginning of the journey for me, like absorbing like more of an R&B influence into what I do. And, you know, I'd always been into D'Angelo, but I wasn't sure if I had to channel what he did into music that I made. And I grew up with his album Voodoo, absolutely incredible album for, believe it or not, 22 years ago. It still sounds like it came out today. And incredibly influential on all of the mainstream R&B and like, you know, that kind of music landscape, I would say, for anybody who's listening to this. Go check out Voodoo by D'Angelo. But for me, I was progressing away from guitar music. I'm predominantly a guitar player. You can see that from this performance. But for me, it's like, why don't I listen to other instruments and take that influence and transpose it to the guitar? Like more kind of, a lot of my like guitar parts on the second record, they sound like piano parts almost, because I like the idea of a keys part. But you know, I didn't have the patience to learn a new instrument. So I just thought I'd try and rework my guitar so it would sound like a piano or a keyboard or something like that. I also got really into a style of modern electronic music called hyperpop. I really fell for producers like Arca and Sophie and Charlie XCX. And these producers make these otherworldly noises and integrate it as part of like a really fiery pop song. And I thought, wow, how can I get involved in that? And, you know, it's a very new kind of music, you know, typically made by people who are probably like 10 years younger than I am. But I thought, what can I bring my experience with to the table and integrate it into what I do? And it's been an amazing journey going from making this kind of noisy guitar album to still integrating guitars, but making it more of a groovy, inviting R&B album that everyone wants to dance to, you know?
Right. All right. Okay. Thanks for that. So, but what song are you going to sing for us next?
We're going to play I Whitewashed the Old West of my new album, Lal, which you can find on all streaming platforms. This song is called I Whitewashed the Old West.
have to. Could these be the ones gazing too? It started failing me the minute I had something to give. Call me and then expect no one to lie and feeling of it. How to feign or deny with the freedom in mind. How to feign or deny with the freedom in mind. How to feign or deny with the freedom in mind. How to feign or deny with the freedom in mind.
Wow. All right. There are those people, some of them who feel like pop musicians should just be making pop music and not speak about politics and all. So what is your response to people like that?
I feel like when you make pop music or you make music of any stature, you have an enormous amount of influence. Like loads of people who listen to my music talk about how they've been academics trying to preach against the caste system for 30 years. And here I come with a guitar and I'm getting more people involved. And it's like, it's not that I'm better at what I do than what they are at what they do. It's more that, a lecture is one thing, but if you can put something in a pop song, you can get that message to people faster. Like it was like what I was going back to earlier with get people dancing and they'll engage with what you're about. So for me, it's very much a case of, what's it called? It's very much a case of you have a lot of influence by default when you play music, and that's to be used responsibly. And for me, I will be using that responsibly by singing songs against minority rights that are being oppressed, the caste system, nationalism that's gone too far, and illuminating things like disability rights that we need to be talking about more.
Do you feel like, artists should have some sort of responsibility of, apart from just making money and making people dance, do you think that they have, other responsibility towards the people who are listening to their kind of music?
I feel like I have a responsibility to my audience to give them like the most full picture of the politics behind my music. I also feel that I need to be giving people the context for why what I'm doing is important in a way that's going to make sense to them. Like if I'm speaking to a mostly white Western audience, I need to explain what caste is and why it's important. Like we have a lot of problems with football hooliganism here in Scotland. So I'll frame caste in terms of it's a lot like the football hooliganism between different sects of Christianity here in the UK. But in India, I don't have to do that, but I have to be nuanced in other ways, if that makes sense. Like the next song that I'm talking about is a very nuanced piece of music. Like it's about Kashmir, and it's about the fact that, why are some tragedies worth all the social media attention and worth all the donations, whereas other regions that are impacted by tragedies like Kashmir entirely forgotten about. Kashmir's had like a communications blackout for years, and we're barely even aware of the fact if it's lifted or not. And no one's talking about that. They talked about it very briefly a few years ago, just before the pandemic, but Ukraine still gets coverage. Paris got so much coverage after the shootings. All of these tragedies are equal in terms of human suffering. Why are we talking about them in different ways? And why are we all talking about them the same?
Okay, so you've already talked about the song. So I think it's only right that you should listen to that song now. So
yeah, absolutely. This song is called 370 and it's off my new album. Well, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. At a starting night at development, at any other point in time, you would be met with this argument, seed any other guys. Given a part of you is only agitated by a knowledge you hold. When it started, you had only told me to account for my own and me, or at least this century. If instead you motion where your pen got anything to say. Seconds and it wouldn't be exaggerated. Heart and you would celebrate. When it started, you had only told me to account for my own and be, or at least this century.
Thank you for that. So, okay, just one or two questions before we wrap this up. Now, looking back, what would you say are the proudest moments in your life so far?
Musically speaking, I think playing with Tenariwen is very high up on the list. That's on a very, you could gloat about this to people that you meet at a pub or people that you're on stage with and stuff like that. But a personal thing that means a lot to me is when I first went to Canada in 2018, I performed as tour support for a white artist. And I just didn't think anybody would know who I was. But at this gig in Toronto, Canada, some Asian people turned up and they were like, "Are you playing Bunsing tonight? We love that song." And the album had only been out for 3 weeks. And I was like, how do you know about this song, let alone it from the album? You know, so I jokingly responded, "You're going to hear every song from the album tonight, even if you hate that song." But knowing that someone across the Atlantic Ocean cared for what I had to say was incredible. And that's stuck with me ever since.
Okay. So any future plans?
In terms of future plans, we'll be working on the new record, dropping a bunch of remixes every few weeks for the next few months, and we'll be playing a lot of bigger shows as well. We just played with Talvin Singh, played the Roundhouse in London recently, but we'll be playing a bunch of UK festivals like Novum in Newcastle and Greenbelt Festival. I'm asked very often, when are you going to play India? And the answer is sooner than you might think. I'm working on something, but I can't quite reveal all the details yet. But thanks so much for speaking with me and my wife today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here on hashtag the Blue Mic. Thank you so much, Daljit, for that music, for the flute and all that. And also looking all the very best to you and your plans, and looking forward to more music from you. So thank you so much, Kapil, for being here.
Speak to you soon. Thank you.